American League, Jake.
Yeah. I'm an American.
So the Orioles were bad again. Any hope that, we did our sorry for your mentions on Monday. They had the off day. Maybe they did go in for some extra work. But ultimately, when Blake Snell is rolling and you're already struggling, you're probably not going to score very many runs. Now, allowing as many runs as they did to the Giants is a different issue. But it was a non-competitive effort from the Orioles in a stretch where they have not looked very good.
Big error here from the O's. Okay, here's the big error. Mike Elias spoke to the media, the GM of the Orioles, before this game and tried to change the energy, insist that a turnaround was coming. Maybe there still is. But when you're going up against Blake Snell, you got to delay that by a day. You just Mike Elias is unavailable today. He's going to talk to the media tomorrow because now the narrative shift doesn't make sense. You got to sandbag that. You got to sandbag that if you're facing locked in Blake Snell. Orioles had no chance last night. Now, all of the things Elias said about a turnaround ring hollow when you go out and you get 5 hits all game and don't score a run.
Yeah, and they lost because they did score. So I don't want to go too hard on the pitching, and Suarez wasn't good. But also, when you're putting Kimbrel into low leverage and he still gives up 6 runs, it's just okay, now how am I supposed to feel about that, right? This is supposed to be like a get-right outing, and he can't get through the inning. Now, hey, you got 2 perfect from Birch Smith, so that's encourage. That gives
not
you
the problem. Not the problem.
Bit of hope.
Not even close. Birch Smith, get out of here. Birch Smith is not a character in the collapse of this team.
He is, but he is. No, I know. I'm projecting forward. They might actually need Birch Smith to get outs, but it's not going to matter if they can't score. So
if the Orioles lose a playoff game because Birch Smith blows it, that's not no one cares. This offense,
well, that's not true. Jordan, but I agree with you.
Stop. This offense stinks.
Okay,
right now.
I know. You're right.
They stink.
You're right.
Birch Smith is nowhere in the room of the conversation.
It's not why they're here.
It's not why they're here.
It's not
why
they're
here. Has been bad for 2.5 months. Okay,
I know, but
they have a plethora of injured hitters. Cedric Mullins and Gunnar Henderson are the only 2 guys who've been hitting for this team at all. Ryan O'Hearn has fallen off a cliff. And last night, facing Blake Snell, it looked like they were playing against a different sport.
Correct.
They were nowhere close at no point. Emmanuel Rivera hit 6th last night.
He had a hit.
And
he at least got a hit.
I know he had a hit. He had the first hit of the game. Okay. The most telling moment, there was a quote that Mike Elias said where he said he didn't anticipate the loss of depth this second half through injury. That is the whole point of building a roster. That is the whole thing. Of course, there is an amount of injuries that you cannot account for. I understand that. From the pitching side, everybody and their non-baseball watching relatives knew that the Orioles were light and needed more help at the deadline. And they just straight up didn't get it because they tried to get cute and trade for Trevor Rogers because he had team control. Blake Snell was another guy who could have gotten dealt deadline. And here he is shoving it down your throat in a really, really important game.
That's true. You could have convinced the Giants to trade you Blake Snell. Absolutely.
The Orioles at this point are going to be the top wildcard seed, almost certainly. They are going to have a 3-game set in the wildcard round, almost certainly, at home against the Royals. It will be very cool because it will be Gunnar against Bobby Witt, and that'll be fun to watch. However, the vibe around Camden Yards is a catastrophe right now compared to what it was and what it should have been. And I think the important thing about Mike Elias, right? He has done an amazing job at turning this team around and getting them in the position where they're at. They have been so good since really the middle of 2022. However, he has yet to prove that he is capable of being the GM of a competitive team and making the moves that can fill out a roster.
Contending team.
Contending team.
Yes.
Now, is he capable of that? Maybe.
Yeah.
The
Still
early returns.
Yeah.
The early returns are not particularly encouraging.
Yeah.
Now, remember, this is year 2 of what is supposed to be and should be a long era of contention for the Baltimore Orioles. The last 3 months raise a lot of questions. And if they bounce out of October very swiftly, those questions need to be asked over the offseason. The flip side of the Orioles falling apart is that the Yankees have opened up a 4-game lead in the division with a rousing win out in Seattle last night, telling Brian Wu to frickin' beat it winning 11-2 against the Mariners.
Yes, and we'll talk more about that game specifically later. But the point is, the Yankees just look better, and Judge is putting some good swings together. The offense is starting to cook. Volpe was benched for at least a game. That was interesting. Oswaldo Cabrera getting the start at shortstop last night, I believe. That was, I don't think that's permanent, but Volpe's offensive struggles now being highlighted more as the rest of the team has started to hit much better. But again, this is still first world problems ultimately for the Yankees when you see what Juan Soto has done. We'll talk about more about that later. But yeah, so the Yankees in a good place. And then also just bigger picture, the other thing in the American League that's important is it's just a big week in the AL Central. And I've been there in Cleveland for the last 2 games with the Twins and the Guardians. The Royals and Tigers have played 2 very, very compelling games as well. I was not in attendance for those games, so I'm not going to comment on those as much. As I know there are a lot of Tigers fans listening that are sad that we're not talking about them more. And again, we're going to have to here soon. But interesting first couple games. One of the wins of the season for Cleveland on Monday in a game where Matthew Boyd was not good, and they used kind of their B relievers until Clase. They managed to come back. Kyle Manzardo, big swing late. Stephen Vogt getting very emotional in the press conference afterwards.
I want to talk about that.
Very much. Yeah, let's just hit that right now. Let's hit it right now. So just to set the seed, right? Okay, so Kyle Manzardo hits a big go-ahead home run in the 8th inning. They bring in Clase. They slam the door. The Twins have another heartbreaking loss. Home run is against Griffin Jax, who's been one of the best relievers in baseball this year. Stephen Vogt afterwards is asked about, he's had a million to talk about how great the clubhouse is, and I love these guys, blah, blah, blah. And he was Mandy Bell of MLB.com to ask him, like, what was going through your mind when, Manzardo hits that homer? Pretty much the most basic question imaginable. And he starts talking about how, the home run's great, but my favorite moment is looking at Josh Naylor, who had hit a double to lead off the inning, standing there with his arms up looking. And, that moment between 2 teammates and looking at the dugout. And then he just starts kind of getting choked up and just talking about he's like, I love those guys. I love those guys. This was an emotional win, an emotional night. And we were all just looking around like, whoa, whoa. Like again, because the words that he was saying, he has been saying the whole season. So it's like the sentiment was not new, but because that win, so a lot of the Guardians wins. Now they've had some dramatic wins. They had that extra inning game in New York, and they've had some other, comebacks, but a lot of them have been kind of to script. You get up by a couple runs and then you just turn it over to the best bullpen in baseball and you kind of cruise the rest of the way. It's very, very, copy paste. That's the recipe. But to have a game like this where it's turns late, a game that was not going well, you could tell it really got to him. And Stephen Vogt has certainly been a very interesting person in this Guardian season, and it was an interesting moment.
More crying, please.
Yeah, more crying for sure.
More crying. The no crying in baseball line has set our sport back so far. More crying in baseball.
Yes.
This whole exercise, and it's our lives, it's our jobs, it's our passion, doesn't actually matter unless it matters, right? And when it should mean something. The amount of time, effort, passion that Stephen Vogt has poured into this team this year, that all managers hopefully are pouring into their teams. That should matter. And to see it matter and to see him let it matter was really gratifying, because on the public side, we just want to know, we want to see that it matters the same to them that it does to the fans.
Totally.
Right? That's what fans want to see. And I think Vogt tearing up here and showing emotion and being raw is just another sign that he's good at this.
Yeah.
Right? I think a lot of managers would have just kind of turned that switch off and and
he's
said something boring, and he can do that.
Yeah, he's done that a lot. He's figured out how to give the kind of standard managerial answers. But no, I mean, there's
we love
no
a cry.
doubt that he's as a first time guy is pretty cool. So
did you cry? Important. Did you cry when he cried? You were in the room. Did you cry?
Well, then the funniest part was that Manzardo comes in after. Right after him to do his post game, and he's a rookie, biggest home run, biggest swing of his career, by far, and he's just and I was like, man, that guy wasn't crying. How much does he care? It's
everyone should cry.
This guy doesn't mean as much to him. Other Guardians thing quickly. Quan going on the IL yesterday. I'm not going to get into the details of that, but the point is, choosing to put someone on the IL at this point in the season is significant. Now, they backdated it to Saturday, which means that he is going to be eligible, of course, to return before the postseason. But they are now going to rely on some other guys. That's why Manzardo is very important. That's why Angel Martinez, another rookie, very important for them to come up and play well. So that is something certainly to monitor with Cleveland. Minnesota wins the second game. They really patched it together after Zebby Matthews had a solid start for them. So big response there, but still 2 more games in this one. I will be there again tonight. And then the other thing is that the Tigers won again. So
can't stop.
The Guardians, I believe, can clinch today still with another Royals loss and a win. But the Guardians are closing in on clinching the division. They're still, of course, pushing for that top seed. But the Tigers now are a game and a half, right? Behind Minnesota. Yeah, game and a half behind Minnesota. Minnesota does have the tiebreaker there, but two incredible wins in Kansas City these last couple nights is ridiculously impressive. And yes, if they do indeed complete the sweep, we'll probably have a more substantial Tigers conversation on Friday.
We'll let you know who is on the Tigers.
Yes, that is the American League, as we mentioned Houston won. I think that's it for postseason picture.